Joining me today is Nancy West, who is the founder of the New Hampshire Center for Public Interest Journalism. Nancy, thanks so much for being here. This organization's, it's a nonprofit, and you're less than 2 years old?
Yeah, we're 18-month-old now.
So what caused you to create the center? Why'd you do that?
It's sort of evolved. I left the New Hampshire Union Leader 3 years ago, and I started teaching down at Boston University at the New England Center for Investigative Reporting. They have a summer program for students who come from all over the world who want to learn investigative reporting. And that was really my first introduction to nonprofit news, the New England Center for Investigative Reporting. And it didn't sink in at first, but as I started to figure out how I was going to make a difference in journalism in New Hampshire, I thought I might start out freelancing and just doing some stories that I thought were being ignored or overlooked or not really covered in depth. And I found that really wasn't going to work. There's just not a big market for that here. And I met with the people at New England Center for Investigative Reporting. We looked at the possibility of having a New Hampshire page on their website, their nonprofit news website. I also talked to Ann Galloway at Vermont Digger. She started a very similar nonprofit 6 years ago in Vermont. And I started to believe that the only way we were going to really stick with New Hampshire news the way I wanted to do it was to start a nonprofit and build from scratch.
And so nonprofits fill sort of needs that aren't being met either by the market or by government. What need did you see not being met that you wanted to fill?
The real need, there's a couple. One is State House coverage. Years ago, there were 6 to 9 reporters at the press room in New Hampshire at the State House in Concord. And then now I go up there, unless it's the day that Governor Sununu is inaugurated, it's often empty. There's some people who work there part-time. I know the Concord Monitor has a very good reporter there. I believe AP still has a reporter there, and New Hampshire Public Radio. These are terrific journalists, but many are being stretched very thin because they're also doing statewide stories as well as legislative coverage.
So you've just saw, I don't want to say a dearth, but really a shift from the amount of people who focus on legislative issues declined over the last 10, 15 years.
Oh my God. If people realized the shrinking population of reporters in this state, I think they'd understand why we are where we are, which is not in a good place. And I've gotten the figures from the Department of Labor at New Hampshire. There are fewer than half the news jobs, newspaper jobs, that could include advertising, sales, whatever, but it probably goes across the board. There were fewer than half in 2015 than there were 15 years prior.
Wow. So I mean, it's a declining industry. I mean, we know it's sort of a declining industry.
Reporting is very people intensive, and the best reporters are experienced reporters, and they cost money. They're not a ritzy group. They don't make a fortune, but they do demand to be paid.
They still have to pay rent.
Actually, at my place, they're not being paid right now, but some are. They eventually will be. But I'll give you an example at the New Hampshire Union Leader, and not to single them out, there were 28 full-time reporters in the year 2000 when I was there. When I left, there were 8 full-time reporters. Now, that kind of shift, and I know a lot has shifted onto part-timers, and they're really doing the best they can with what they have. But look at the Laconia Citizen. I'm sure you're aware, in September, they couldn't even sell the paper. They just closed its doors. That's a 90-year-old paper that really filled a niche in Laconia and did a terrific job, and they're gone. Luckily, the Laconia Daily Sun is still very active there. And the same gentleman owns the Laconia Daily Sun, the Berlin Daily Sun, and Conway Daily Sun, and I believe a few others in Maine.
But it's endemic of sort of the trend for decline in newspapers.
Yeah, it's not just New Hampshire. This is across the country. Some places worse than even here.
So we're out of time in this segment, but I do want to talk about sort of what your nonprofit's doing to remedy that. And when we return, we're going to continue our conversation and focus on that. So please stay with us.